Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports. Coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C. And them good old boys down south, I want to say, bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond in London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Canada. We love you in Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south in the land of the free and the home on the brave on a beautiful December the 26th, 2019. Ground of the Deportes, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Well, Charlton finally made it home from delivering all those crisp gifts and everything. It's getting harder and harder to fly around as you gain more and more weight, but I'm still a little pissed off, Charlton. Somebody still has a TV antenna up. And I ripped my britches as I was trying to get down a chimney one night. So I'm waiting on my stuff to come back from the dry cleaners, but I'm going to have to send them a cleaning bill for whipping my britches on that TV antenna. Everybody should have a satellite dish.
Everybody should have a satellite. Well, that's why they're going streaming, Big C. Everybody's starting to stream now. Santa has to know that. And there's so much going on in this sports universe. And as we always say on a very happy holiday season, when they go, ho, 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 Merry Christmas, we really appreciate that. Because not everybody has the chance to do what we do on Big C Sports and bring in celebrations. Big C, I saw so many Santas running around. And I even saw more black Santas on TV. I think, are you saying Americans don't care what color you are as long as you bring them a toy, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, all I saw was smiles on kids' faces, Charlton, as I was peeking through windows, and I'm not a peeping Tom, but I wanted to see the joy that the kids were receiving yesterday.
Yeah, it's wonderful. I really appreciate the spirit of Christmas and the holidays that it brings, and some people don't believe in it, but that's their choice not to believe in it. I do want to say today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, just tell them Charlton and Big C sent you, as well as a fleet of Cadillac cars. You can also follow the Big C Sports, powered by Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports podcast. You will hear from our national sponsors on podcast and TV shows. You'll hear Welcome to the Show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic and do his thing. I really appreciate the way things are going with Big C Sports. Also, Big C Sports, you can follow on Xfinity, Comcast Television, now on Roku TV, on Google TV, Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. So growth in streaming and technology make that important. I want to also mention Big C Sports, acknowledged by iHeartRadio, one of the top podcasts in the universe. Would you believe in Africa, in East Africa, they're going to have a podcast convention coming up in 2020 because streaming really is worldwide, unlike the days where you're trapped in your own neighborhood. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, streaming has grown with the internet, Charlton, over the decades. When you think about the outreach that it has to any outlying place around the world, you're not limited to those TV antennas that I ripped my pants on, Charlton, years ago. And It used to be that you had to have a satellite dish. All you have to have is an internet connection now to be in touch with the world.
Yeah, well, I want to do just say is good having you back. I know traveling, I think they were saying that this was the largest amount of travelers throughout the history of the country. Everybody says that. I mean, who counted everybody? But everybody has their way of tracking who travels. But just getting around, it seems to be more and more people are flying. There's a movie back in the day called Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. I think Steve Martin did the movie. But everybody has their own mode of travel. What is it like when you're going from airport to airport, and for the holidays, people get upset when they have to wait in line just to be more convenient? Big C, your thought?
Well, Charlton, wait in line is not an empty seat on the flight. The flights are getting smaller. You're getting larger. And just, everybody is crammed trying to get places. The freeways are packed. The airways are packed, even the rail system.
Yeah.
But, this is what this time of the year brings, that everybody wants to get together with family and friends. You don't often get a chance to see some of these people on a regular basis. So we take time throughout the holidays as people, not just Americans, but people around the world.
Yeah.
To spend time with our loved ones and just enjoy the holidays and festivities.
Yep, it's always important to do that. And so I just want to make sure that people understand that we always want to pay homage to our military veterans too. People go through issues. And so we always want to give out the National Suicide Hotline number. It's 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. Big C, a lot of veterans, they don't have a Christmas tree to break bread and drink warm libations. Big C, why is that so important to you?
Well, Charlton, not just veterans, but many Americans don't have that opportunity to enjoy and celebration of Christmas. It's just another day that they're trying to get through their lives. And, you know, we use the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number, Charlton, throughout our shows, throughout the weeks, to let people know how important it is that this horrific disease, Charlton, has afflicted so many people in America. And so many of our veterans have succumbed to it. And the nation needs to find a way to stem this epidemic. The National Suicide Prevention Hotline number is there for people to have a voice to speak to. But to call that number, Charlton, most people don't always have a phone.
Yeah.
When you think about being homeless, a lot of those people don't have access to what we think is a basic necessity in life, a cellular phone, and many people don't have landlines anymore. So to be able to have access to the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number, Charlton, is a great thing. And these people are there to help you through your crisis, to talk to you, to listen to you, not to be judgmental. Our veterans come back to this country, Charlton, after serving tours of duty or just being released from the military.
Yeah.
And not having that daily support base that they've had when they were in active duty and they were in the armed forces. And so the National Suicide Prevention number is there. And not just for our great veterans, Charlton, but also our everyday American citizens.
Everybody.
Because suicide doesn't have an age, race, or creed that it afflicts. And so many people, Charlton, have gone down this negative path, and this National Suicide Prevention Hotline number is there to help stem this horrific disease.
800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or they can text 838-255. That's 838-255, and hopefully get some help. I just appreciate so much for the holidays. I had the chance to travel, and I ate too much food, but that can be a good and bad thing. I just appreciate being able to get around and see people that you care about. And it's not always about opening toys. I think Christmas has been so celebrated, and I'm not trying to tell people how to think, but there's sometimes when people just want to open a present and have really no feeling about what is Christmas about. It's always about, give me my present, Big C. I wish that people had more of an affinity for what it was really like as we celebrate the birth of Christ. Make sure your thoughts.
Well, Charlton, throughout the holidays, there was a great commercial on television that took me back to when my children were young. It's a FedEx commercial, and I'll give them that free plug.
Yeah.
But this mother, you know, buys the gifts and everything, and the child is sitting there playing with the gifts under the tree. Then all of a sudden she turns around and looks at the box, and her imagination runs wild, and that's the beauty of having a child, is that their imagination is totally free to be and to become and do whatever they want to do.
Yeah.
The little girl becomes a space explorer all of a sudden. This box becomes a rocket ship. She's imagining flying around the house past the grandmother, past her brother. And then when her mother finally comes downstairs, she's sitting there in the living room holding the box. And the mother said, I should have just bought the box.
Yeah.
And it took me back years, Charlton, because I can recall when my children were little, you get the toys out, they play with them for a few minutes, they get in the box as you were throwing the paper in, collecting all the paper.
Yeah.
And that was the biggest part of their Christmas day, and it brought me such joy watching this commercial.
Yeah, I really appreciate the fact that I've been able, I've lost my father a couple of years ago, but I've been able to, say Merry Christmas to my mother every single day that I've had a Christmas. And that to me is so important. I know as people grow older, and kids grow up, they go off and start their own lives. They start planting their own gardens. But something that even every farmer looks for is a seed. Like, what's the new seed for the next generation? And I hope that, at least, I'm just speaking for myself, everybody has their own opinion. I hope that that's never lost among families. A farmer will replant crop. They'll always replant the seed after the harvest. And I see, as we all get older, people don't come back and plant seeds anymore. They just go off and do their own harvest, and that's okay too. Everybody has their own style, but I know what's near and dear to me, and I appreciate that more, and I appreciate that story you told about what children do too. I know in the world of sports, Big C, we are big on the holidays. I know we'll do Big C's NFL. Man, I'm really looking forward to the game in Seattle tomorrow. We'll talk more about that tomorrow also. But I just wanted to get on this bowl series. We have so many bowl games, and I know a lot of people are wondering who's going to win the bowl games and who's going to have the chance to compete for the national championship game. But before we get into that, I want to get into the division that does it right. There's 28 teams that are involved in Division II playoffs, and nobody really knows who won the national championship. I'm going to go back over the last 10 years because this thing about more is better or less is better. Well, the division that has more, no one really celebrated the fact that West Florida won the 2019 College Football Division II National Championship. They beat Minnesota State by the score of 48-40. Big C, do you feel it's kind of like Christmas? The more presents you get, the more you kind of speed through? Or the fewer presents, the more you take your time? That make any sense? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I think what this country in every way has become a country of gluttony. Even in sports, you look at the excessiveness of amount of sports that are available. You get to the point where saturation creates unappreciation.
Yeah.
And I think that's what has become. And when we look at creating these playoff systems in college, you talk about the Division II championship.
Yeah.
Unless you're a Division II aficionado, no one really knows what's going on in Charlton, to even know the names of these schools. And yet, there are so many different levels of college football that are out there.
Oh, yeah.
And as we sit here over the holiday season, and we're pushed some 40, 50 bowl games across our face, doesn't really matter. You turn on the TV, and you're seeing a stadium, Charlton, there's 10 or 12,000 people in there.
Yeah.
And most of these people are just affiliated with the program.
Yes,
we talk about the holiday season. You spoke about how difficult it is to travel.
Yeah.
How can you get on these airways and people are going places for the holidays and say, okay, all of a sudden now I got to get to this city for a bowl game, and we were just selected for this bowl game 10 days ago.
Yeah.
I got to drop all of my holiday preparation just to go there. I got to leave friends and family behind to go watch a game for 3 hours and then still try to get back home.
And then, as you know, when they had airplanes that had to be rerouted or, because delays happen. And you can't just bump a plane because somebody got to get a flight behind you. They just got to wait their turn in line. So I don't know how many people were getting on the plane to go watch West Florida play against Minnesota State. But it was 48-40, so congratulations, West Florida. I told you Florida would find a way to get a team playing for a national championship. It just wasn't the D1 programs, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, as you think about that, Charlton, and you talk about a game being 48-40,
yeah,
and not being talked about on a national level, because even throughout the national media, Charlton, it doesn't spark the interest with them. It's not a big money market as they look at those type of games.
Yeah.
And as we get this overflow of college football that's going on now, Charlton, after the season. You look at the games that started, I believe, on the 20th of December, when the bowl season started. Look at when the conference championships ended, Charlton, 2 weeks prior to that.
Yeah.
So you're asking people to book reservations on a plane, in a hotel in another city, rental car, and all of these things in a span of to be there in less than 10 days.
Yeah.
To stop everything they're doing. And this is what the difference is when we look at what the big bowl season used to be when I was growing up.
Yeah.
We had the Astro Bluebonnet Bowl that was in Houston, Texas. That was New Year's Eve, Charlton.
Yeah.
So college football ended back in those days in November. It was over with.
Yeah.
The first part of November, the college football season was over. There was no conference championship games that was played, Charlton. You won your conference. That was it.
Yep.
You didn't have that situation. And so you basically had 5 games. You had the Astro Bluebonnet Bowl on New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
Then you turned around on New Year's Day. I believe you had the Citrus Bowl or whatever it was that was down in Miami. It was in Orlando or something along that nature. Or in Jacksonville, wherever they had the bowl game at that time.
Yeah.
Then you also had the Rose Bowl. Well, the Cotton Bowl played before that. Then you had the Rose Bowl.
Yep.
Then you had the Sugar Bowl. And the night would end on New Year's Day with the Orange Bowl down in Miami.
That's right.
And then during that time, Charlton, you would have the pseudo national championship game. And not only sometimes it wasn't even named after the games were played. You had to wait to the next day,
to find
January 2nd,
Yeah.
to have a national championship declared.
Yeah.
And, because you had to get the coaches poll, you had to get the writers poll, and you had to sit there and compare notes before you declared a national championship.
Yep.
And now none of that is around.
Well, I remember I was just watching. They have so many bowls coming up. I was watching. It was Oklahoma. They were ranked number 1 in the country. They were playing LSU, which was ranked number 2 in the country. And I think it was a 2000 bowl game down the south. And then that same year, USC was ranked number 1 in their poll against Michigan. And USC beat Michigan in the Rose Bowl 28-14. And LSU upset Oklahoma in their bowl game, and I think it was 21-14. And so we had those split national championship games, and so it wouldn't even settle it back then. It would have been great if we had what we have now back then. But I want to get your thoughts on a lot of the bowl games. I just want to take a moment to pay homage to some of the past Division II champions. 2018 Valdosta State, they had a win of 49-47 over Ferris State. 2017, it was Texas A&M Commerce, Big C. So A&M has won something 37-27 over West Florida. Now notice these scores. They don't preach defense until the next game. In 2016, it was Northwest Missouri State, and it was a 29-3 win over North Alabama. You notice I guess offense is a premium back then, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, our offense has always been a premium in college football, Charlton. Even if you look at how the playoff structure has gone in the past couple of years, there's been a lot of high-scoring games. In those subdivision teams, Charlton, the offense has always been predicated. A lot of college records have been set.
Yeah.
It's just not seen on television. People think because you're in a Power 5 conference that you play the best of college football. Well, you're the most publicized of college football. And we, like I said, we get oversaturated with it now. As you look at this bowl season, when you put out 40-plus bowls,
Yep.
not only do people have to attend them, but people have to watch them.
Yeah.
What time of the day do they come on? That's the thing. I mean, there's bowl games that come on during the daytime. People still have jobs during the holiday season.
Yeah.
So, what is it really doing for college football? Anything that you look at and you become oversaturated with, people will start to lose interest because it becomes too common.
Yeah.
So you have to make something more precious. It has to be rationed out so that people really want to be there. And like I said, when we went back to the New Year Bowl games, Charlton, from decades ago, you go back 40 years ago, when you only had those games on particular days. Go back 50 years ago. You had 5 college bowl games 50 years ago. That was it.
Yeah.
5. And those 5, they were all significant because you knew you were going to get the national championship out of it, and it's basically what you have now in a playoff scenario.
Yep.
If you look at the playoffs, and, we talked about it a couple of weeks ago when they talked about the conference championships, as you were talking about expanding college football playoffs.
Yeah.
You had 10 teams competing for 4 positions when you have the Power 5 championships. That's what it is. That's that first round of the playoffs. Automatically 2 of those 10 are not going to make it in. That's basically what you had 50 years ago when you had the 5 bowl games. You had 10 teams competing for the national championship, even though it was only one round, but you had the number 1 team, you had the number 2 team, the number 3 team, and number 4.
Yeah.
And you knew out of those top 4, just like in the playoff system that you have now, that one of those teams was going to be named national championship, if not dual national championship.
And oftentimes the dual national championship, because there is no exact science. You get a chance to argue about something. And just to close out before we get into the Blue Bloods, Big C, 2016, Northwest Missouri State won their game 29-3 over North Alabama, and they won a repeat national championship because they also won in 2015 Northwest Missouri State 34-7 over Shepherd. And then I'll just go down the last few: Colorado State, Pueblo, Northwest Missouri State again, 2012 Valdosta State down in Georgia, 2011 Pittsburgh State, in 2010 Minnesota Duluth. They defeated Delta State by a score of 20-7. So from the games that have 28 people that compete in those championship series to decide who's going to be the national championship, all it really determines, Big Z, is more of an opportunity to get TV on to cover football. But as we noticed, no one's covering those games. So it really shows, but they still book the airline tickets, Big C. They still fill the hotels. they still had some people travel. You may have 10 to 15,000 go to those games, and in the championship game, maybe you have 25,000. But it's a lot to do, and a lot of people don't even know what's going on. And I want to get on some talk about before I even get on the Blue Bloods, how much longer, because it started in 1985 and now it's expanded, how much longer will we have it where bowl games are important, but important to who? Nobody's really watching. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I think over time, over the next decade, you're going to see a reduction in these bowl games. And it'll probably be even quicker than that because as we look at it, travel time, lack of play on television where the number ratings is what everybody is looking for.
Yeah.
If that bowl game doesn't spark any interest, why do you keep playing it? And that's what it's going to come down to. I understand the greatness of college kids saying, wow, I'm getting a chance to play in a bowl game.
Yeah.
It's a big deal for many of them that play in these games. But we're also getting to the point where the top-ranked potential professional players are declining to play in these games.
That's
right.
right.
I'm going to skip the game because I'm getting ready for the draft.
Yeah.
And so as those numbers increase, Charlton, as we see a lot of these players trying not to risk injury, we've seen players injured in these bowl games that have potentially cost them millions of dollars. I know you're big on high school football playoffs and all of those things. There was a game on last week, a game, school out of Florida, Thomas Aquinas.
Oh, St. Thomas Aquinas.
Playing a team from Honolulu.
Yeah, St. Louis.
I looked at that game, Charlton, and the kids from Honolulu had 7 players knocked out of that game due to injuries, and I believe it was their 14th game of the season.
Yeah.
They lost 7 players in this game to injuries. We're talking about young, developing bodies still.
Yeah.
They had to fly from Honolulu to Las Vegas to play a football game. Almost a 6-hour flight.
Yep.
And the time difference, Charlton, of the hours in Vegas versus Honolulu.
Yeah.
But they lost 7 players playing the 14th game of a high school season. Is that necessitated?
No, it wasn't. And even on top of that, Big C, there was a school from the state of Washington called East Catholic. East Catholic. They played a school out of Marietta, Georgia. So they put state champions versus state champions. And Geico paid for it. And the stadiums were not full. I mean, Bishop Gorman's a nice high school stadium, but they were not full. And I thought it was kind of overkill. I think win your state. If you want to play a state champion from another team, play them the year coming up. Play them in the preseason. But after you get crowned your own state champion.
But even realistically, what does that prove that you're playing state champions from another state, Charlton, at the end of a high school season?
Nothing.
Who does that benefit? I mean, you've seen the kids play for 11, 12 games. That should be enough. It should be a cap on high school nationally. You talk about legislating a lot of things around this country. You don't need 3 weeks of high school football playoffs to prove that a team is a champion. And that's what you have now, 3 and 4 weeks of high school playoffs. You got 10 regular season games, and some teams even playing 11.
Oh, 6 weeks down in Texas.
Which is what a college schedule used to be when I was in college.
Yeah.
We had 11 games.
Yep.
And then these kids are playing 3 rounds of playoffs, so you're up to 14 games. I saw with one team, 16-game schedule. That's an NFL schedule
down in Texas
on 15, 16, 17-year-old kids, 18-year-old kids.
Yep.
And you're saying for what? Where's the benefit? What in 10 years? What will it improve?
Nothing.
Okay, we played 16 games and we lost the championship.
Yeah.
What will that prove to them physically? We always look at the CTE struggles as they try to say they're making the game safer.
Yeah.
But if you're making a kid take more and more poundings, and how are you making the game safer?
You're not, and that's down in Texas where their state champion was played 16 games, but. I don't know when it's going to stop because you don't want to see 18 games, and even the NFL want to go 18 regular season games. There are players who can't make the final 16 games without being broken up, Big C. But I want to get on this as we, give our own opinion, and everybody has their own opinion about what's right and what's too much and what's not enough. But I want to get your thoughts on if we bring up these high school games. We talked about that. You saw high school football being broadcast on a national broadcast network when you did not see the D2 football college championship broadcast. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I always think of it as exploitation of the youth. And what you do is you give a false sense of exception to these high school kids. They're going out there, and a lot of these kids, like when I saw the kids from Honolulu get hurt, I think that they're out there paying more attention to the TV camera than they are about executing the plays that they need. And they take the focus off to how to protect themselves, Charlton, trying to look good for a TV camera.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate because you had so many kids get injured, and this is something they have to find a way to fight against.
Yeah.
You're too many games on a young growing body, and it benefits who?
Not too many people. And one more thing I'll make a statement to. Competition in Hawaii is not the same as in Florida or California. You can take their top team and they can do okay in their state, but when you come against the public schools from the mainland's Big C, they have players that come from 40 and 50 miles away, and there's just more to choose from. You can see it. I could see it when I watched Marietta, Georgia, line up against the kids from Washington. There was like a distinct size disadvantage for the kids from Washington. The kids down at Georgia, there were some players that looked like they were already playing college football. Same with St. Thomas Aquinas. Same with I think St. John Bosco and Modern Day, those programs. There's a lot of programs that just can't compete. So even the Hawaii State champion had stopped their 38-game win streak. Coach Kyle Leza, he's one of the historic Hall of Fame coaches in Hawaii. But even he mentioned there's just a different level of competition. So give me your thoughts. Did you watch much of the Bahamas Bowl in Nassau where we had Buffalo and Charlotte? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I really didn't. I didn't even know the game was on. I'm not a channel surfer when it comes to these games. I'm a traditionalist. You know, it's too many bowl games. I don't get ready. It's like, you know, when you wanted to talk about the NBA.
Yeah.
I'm like, you know, to me the NBA really doesn't start until Christmas.
Yeah.
Once I've gotten all of my college football out of the way and the NFL is just about over, that's when you start looking at the NBA.
Yeah.
Because my attention span is about as short as my hair, and I'm bald-headed.
Yeah,
so I can't pay that much attention to things.
Yeah. Well, no, you can't say you're bald-headed. Okay, you can because Santa does wear a wig. Does that make any sense, Big C? Your thoughts?
I didn't say that my beard was gone.
I understand. So when you get into that game, and then we have the big games coming up, obviously, I saw a little bit, as much as I could stomach today, just kind of flipping channels, and I was watching Miami, which is 6-6, versus Louisiana Tech 9-3, and that's down in Shreveport, Louisiana, the Independence Bowl. And there's another game on tonight. Detroit is Pittsburgh 7-5 versus Eastern Michigan. When I look at Miami, I think they were trailing at halftime. I'm not trying to give out scores, but it's almost as if what you said earlier. There are a lot of players on Miami that were getting ready for the NFL draft. They're not trying to go in and compete against a program that they only would normally play in a preseason in Louisiana Tech. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you mentioned Miami. What's the date? December 26th, okay?
Yeah.
We have grown accustomed to watching Miami play on January 1st over the past several decades. You think about since the 80s, early 80s, Dalton, when Miami became a top-flight program.
Yeah.
You were accustomed to seeing them, the Cotton Bowl, Sugar Bowl, Fiesta Bowl, Orange Bowl. This is where Miami's legacy is built in college football.
Yeah.
Not playing in some game in Shreveport, Louisiana, Charlton. So as you think about that as a football fan over time, and you're saying, okay, Miami's not playing a game on New Year's Day.
Right.
They're playing a game in Shreveport, Louisiana. We know they had a few players from Shreveport.
Right, exactly.
We didn't realize they would be going down there and play.
Yeah.
So when you think about top-flight programs, I know you're always talking about the Pac-12. We were accustomed to seeing the Pac-12 play the Rose Bowl.
Yeah.
That was synonymous with a Pac-12 champion, a team that was a double-digit win team, and you knew they were going to be playing the Big Ten champion.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen this year. You're going to get the Big Ten runner-up, Wisconsin, in the Rose Bowl, where traditionally it would have been Ohio State playing in the Rose Bowl, the granddaddy of them all. And they would have been playing the Pac-12 champ, Oregon.
Yeah.
That's what I grew up watching, a game like that on New Year's Day after the Rose Parade. That game had meaning.
Yeah.
It had meaning. And now you're going to look at these two schools that had always had meaning on New Year's Day, non-present on New Year's Day.
Yeah, and I know money rules everything. I do believe that, and then we'll talk about a couple of those games coming up. I don't know what's going to change it, but that tradition means something. We're going to get expansion, Big C. It just, the reason I'm saying that is because we even see expansion on the high school level. When you brought up the point that the school down in Texas won the Texas State Championship by playing 16 games. Even with that, schools will still play what's called a scrimmage, where you'll play, sometimes they'll invite 4 different programs to a school and they'll scrimmage. And so even with the scrimmage, there's schools in Texas that really can say they played 17 games, even though they don't count scrimmages as a game. I want to
think about this, Charlton. As you talk about college expansion of the playoff system, which I already said we have the expansion, we have a 10-team playoff system now.
Yeah.
So how would you expand that if you're talking about expansion of the college football season? So all of a sudden now you're going to be inviting a 2-loss team into the college football playoffs. There'd be no way around that. What if that 2-loss team goes out and knocks off a team that's undefeated when they get to the final game? Because now you've pushed it beyond the 15 games that a team is going to be playing, Charlton, for the championship to a 16th game.
Yeah.
So you got a team that's going to be 15-0 versus a team that's going to be 13-2, and the 13-2 team goes out there and knocks off the 15-0 team, Charlton. But 2 of those losses came against teams, Charlton, that were not in the top 5 in the country.
Yeah.
Would they still be considered the national champion?
Well, that is because it's an eye test. They voted in. I want to take what's called a Big C timeout at the halfway mark. We'll come right back and talk more college football. And I also want to get Big C's thoughts on NFL before we close out. We'll take the Big C timeout. We'll be back in just a moment. All right, we are back from the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause. And you can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Spreaker.com. You can follow Big C Sports on the apps that I love called Google and Alexa. Just say Google. Our Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear Welcome to the Show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing, and I really appreciate the way things are going with Big C Sports. You can also follow Big C Sports on Roku TV, Fire TV, Apple TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. Just make sure that your smart TV is compatible with Roku. Go to the iHeart app, pull up podcast, Big C Sports Podcast. You'll hear the Big C Sports Show. So I want to get on that thought that I was telling you. We are going to have an expansion in college football because the money is too big not to. They're not doing it for love. They're not doing it because they want to see who the best team is. But when a corporation like Geico would do a test on the high school system, even though you may have 3,000 people in an 8,000-seat stadium, that check doesn't bounce when Geico writes it. They still want the eyeballs of those high school kids and those parents. And they know you're going to start seeing more checks being written, and that's what will lead to bowl expansion. They'll just change the brackets. It started with Chris Ault back in, I think, 1978. He was the first one that started the D2 playoffs. There were 4 schools. And I know Nevada was one, UMass was the other. I think there was one in Florida A&M, and I can't remember the 4th one. But that was way back in the day. We just finished saying D2 has 28 teams. Big C, your thoughts?
Yeah, but once you expand the Division I college football playoffs, which bowl games do you eliminate? Because you're going to have to start the playoffs at some point.
Yeah.
What's the start date for it? Would it culminate with the championship being on New Year's Day? Because right now it's after New Year's Day when you think about the championship. So where would the playoff games be? Would they be in the Rose Bowl? Would they be in the Orange Bowl? Would they be in the Cotton Bowl? Would they be in the Sugar Bowl? And then the following week you got to play another game? What's going to be the start date? That's the number one thing. So now you're going to eliminate these bowl games that have been part of the history of college football. You can no longer section everything out to be on New Year's Day. So the tradition of college football would be changed forever. You're going to have to eliminate all these other insignificant bowls now that are sitting out there because who's going to care about watching those? So if you expand the playoffs, you're automatically going to lose 30 bowl games. They just have to go away because no one's going to have any interest in it because everyone is going to sit there and say, this is all I'm interested in. Well, the networks are going to lose. I don't think the networks are willing to lose that much money to drop 40 games, Charlton, just to have 6.
And I think the solution is because they're already doing it, Big C. Remember you said you liked growing up and you would watch the Blue Bonnet Bowl, you would watch the Cotton Bowl, Rose Bowl, and then the Sugar Bowl, and then everyone would wait up for the Orange Bowl and then go to bed. So a lot of these bowls are still there, just like Oregon's playing Wisconsin. The Rose Bowl's not going away. It's just made part of a bowl game. Think about what's going to happen on the 28th is going to be Glendale, Arizona, the Fiesta Bowl. Also on the 28th of December, in Atlanta, Georgia, the Peach Bowl. It's part of the college football playoff. It's the semifinals. LSU 13-0 versus Oklahoma 12-1. A rematch of the 2004 bowl game they played in. And then we have Ohio State 13-0 versus Clemson 13-0. Notice those bowls have not gone away. All they do is give them more significance. So what I see happening, because the Rose Bowl didn't go away, it's just part of one of those bowl games that they'll rotate it around. It will never go away. I can see, because money's so big, just like athletes now can make a contract. We're talking about pro players getting $30 million a year, $34 million a year. You never heard that 30 years ago, and it did not break the bank. There's just more money on the horizon. That's my opinion, Big C. Your thoughts?
But see, there is a 2-week span between the semifinal game on the 28th that you spoke about in Atlanta and in Arizona,
Yeah.
versus the championship game in New Orleans.
Yeah.
There's a 2-week span in that, just like in the Super Bowl. So now you're talking about saying, okay, we're going to take what you're going to expand it to eight teams, the playoff system.
I think they will
starts
hit
on the
8.
28th.
I think they'll
So
hit
do
8.
you give it a 2-week bye, or is it a 1-week bye for the winners of those games, Charlton, to go to the next city? And we got to rally up all the fans to get them there. And when you don't have a set site where a game is going to be played,
Yeah.
or who's going to be there, you're telling everybody you got to gather up everything you do in a span of 1 week. College football works a lot different than the NFL. And that's the reason why you don't see those lower division games televised, as you said, versus a high school game.
Right.
Because it's very tough to televise a half-full stadium. You talked about the Pac-12 championship, where at Levi Stadium in San Francisco, you got 15,000 people in a 72,000-seat stadium. That's a week preparation for a team to come from Oregon and a team to come from Utah. Not for a team to fly from Florida or Carolina to go to one of these facilities, halfway across the country or completely across the country. Say if the team had to leave Carolina after winning the first round of the playoffs, Charlton, and fly out to Arizona. How many people can they take out there in a week's notice this time of the year? You got to look at, we just come out of the holiday season because these bowl games are still going to have to be at that time.
Oh, yeah.
You got to make all these preparations within a matter of 3 days to be somewhere and get on the plane and travel to get there. So this is what the networks look at. It's not good eye candy for a network to broadcast the game in a half-full stadium, because you saw the college football games. You saw the conference championships that were played. The conference championship game out there where you are in San Francisco look better than the conference championship game in Texas or the conference championship game in Atlanta. You have to ask yourself that. And so if I'm a network and the Pac-12 is talking about leaving San Francisco already,
They're going to Las
because
Vegas.
the viewership is not there or the attendance.
Yeah.
They're trying to go to another city to use that as a caveat to get people to come.
Well, they're going to Vegas for the Pac-12 championship next year. But I still think, because geographically there's so many different factors as to why maybe more people show up to see a game in the Southeastern Conference Championship, or maybe even the ACC. The ACC Conference Championship, Virginia and Clemson, that didn't sell out either. I think a lot of times, if you're in San Francisco, it costs $1 million to get a house. You can buy 5 houses in the South for $1 million. And so people don't have the money to do a lot of that. But what I think is going to happen,
but geographically, isn't Vegas the same distance from Utah and Oregon as San Francisco is?
Pretty much so. And I've always advocated, because of the cost of living, that you're going to have to start having a home team host. That's just my opinion. Maybe they'll see it different. But Big C, the people who are making the money, they don't care if there's a lot of people or not. They still get paid. If you're an owner of an NFL team, whether you have sellout crowds or not, you still get that TV revenue, which is in the billions of dollars. So they don't really care. It's nice on the eyeball, yes, but their checks are still the same size. I want to get on this. I want to cover a couple of games, and then I want to get your thoughts on the NFL stuff. And I don't think we have enough time to do it all tomorrow, but I want to just get the bigger games coming up. We talked about the rematch with LSU and Oklahoma, but I'm just curious, and I appreciate what's happening tomorrow. We have the Capital One Bowl mania and all that stuff that's going on. You have USC in the San Diego County Credit Union Holiday Bowl. They're playing number 16 Iowa. USC's ranked 22. Now, who's making them ranked? And that's just the people's opinion. But Iowa's doing a classic thing. We lost Coach Hayden Fry, and so they're going to take the Hawkeye off the side of the helmet, Big C. And I'm not. Maybe that's a small thing, but at least they are paying homage to one of their greatest coaches, a good old boy from Texas, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you know, he's legendary. He was legendary there at Triumphant in Iowa. Hayden Fry did so much for that program. You know, took him to the Rose Bowl, took him to national prominence, and he built the program in a place that no one thought anyone could.
Yeah.
He sent many great athletes on to the NFL, Charlton. He was a leader of young men and made them grown men. And that's great respect showing the former coach.
Yeah, and then Clay Helton, obviously with a vote of confidence from the USC administration, they have no choice but to win this game, whether Iowa is going to be, you know, emotionally motivated or not. I don't know if kids that were not under his coaching staff are going to be affected by that, Big C. But Clay Helton has to win this game for USC. I know he got the contract renewed, but there's always a buyout. If you don't win a good game in your own backyard, really, then will they even think about changing things going into next year, or do you buy that argument, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, no, Clay Helton is going to be the coach at USC next year. When you look at bowl games, Charlton, you have to ask yourself, are the players all in on a bowl game? What's the significance of these bowl games, Charlton? Like I said, if these bowl games are not getting you to the next level, players are out there playing cautiously, especially players who are planning to skip to the NFL draft or in their senior year, Charlton. This is nothing that's big for them. It's not a New Year's Day bowl game, and that's what I think has been watered down about college football. Yes, there's a bunch of football on television, but as you look around in these stadiums and you're seeing teams being 6-6, getting into bowl games, is that really a reward? I remember years ago being younger, and in the National Hockey League, there were 6 teams that did not make the NHL playoffs. And you had to explain why you were one of the 6 teams that did not make the playoffs.
Yeah.
Because everybody seemed to make it. and that's what it is with the bowl games.
Yeah.
If you have 42, 47 bowl games being played, you double that number in college teams. So you're looking at a minimum of 84 teams out of 123 Division I colleges, Charlton, making the bowl games.
Yeah.
So really, what's the significance of it? You got losing record. 6-6 to me in football was considered a losing record. If you only had 6 wins, that was a losing record. 500 football, you know, only thing 500 is good in is a baseball player, you know, at the plate. If you can hit 500, you make $1 billion.
He's batting with a laser beam.
If you're 500, you're not a winning team.
Well, again, we can't take our eye off the prize, Big C, because the schools that get the paycheck from these bowl the sponsorship, their check is not any bigger whether they're 10-0 or 6-5, Big C. It's just money will always rule out. That's why I think we're going to see an expansion of the bowl games, Big C. It's about money. It's never about who had how many wins and losses. Military Bowl presented by Northrop Grumman. They build airlines, Big C. North Carolina. They're going to take on Temple. The Temple Owls playing North Carolina, the Tar Heels. Mac Brown's making some money, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, he's making some money. But as you talk about the Grumman, you know, bowl, you know, helicopters are nice. But, you know, we're setting up the flight pattern for these games. And like I said, I'm not against the young men having an opportunity to play in the game.
Oh, yeah.
But I wonder this thing. Has anybody ever done a study on how many players have been injured, Charlton, in these games that were not able to continue because they had an injury and had to go through a surgery after that game was over? I think this is one of the studies that a lot of people need to take a look at. I know, like I said, when we looked at the issue with too many excessive high school games, and everyone is talking about the safety of the young athletes, the CTE issues and all of those things, Charlton. Paychecks are fine, but none of the paychecks are going to the players.
And that's 100% true, and that's because they don't care about the players. We know that, Big C. The new era Pinstripe Bowl, Michigan State, they'll play Wake Forest. So you have those 2 programs. In the Cheez-Its, come on, you can get Air Force. They had a good season. They can get a better bowl than the Cheez-Its Bowl, but the check doesn't bounce, so they'll take the bowl game, Air Force versus Washington State, a running attack versus Coach Leach and his passing attack. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, that's one of those games that Coach Leach may be in trouble, Charlton, because they need to have the football in their hands to throw it. You know, Gordon led the nation in passing yards, but at that ground attack of Air Force Academy, Charlton, they can pound it out, and those big linemen in the Pac-12, are not used to those cut blocks every play. This is the first time that they'll see a wishbone attack.
Yeah, they'll see a wishbone attack. Like the way people would attack the wishbone on the chickens during the holiday. Big C. Oklahoma State versus Texas A&M, the Academy Sports Outdoors Texas Bowl. They do everything in Texas, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, that used to be a conference game between Texas A&M and Oklahoma State, Charlton. It's almost like bragging rights. It's like the Red River Shootout. And, this is a game that, Jimbo Fisher needs to win, because when you look at where he is, this is the first time that he won't be playing a top 10 team, Charlton, and loses if he loses this game.
Yeah, that's incredible. He'll probably, Chuba Hubbard can run the football, Big C. And then as we move this Saturday, we have Memphis. This is noontime on the mothership. Memphis ranked number 17 in the country versus number 10 Penn State. The Goodyear Cotton Bowl Classic. And then when I say that we're going to see an expansion of the bowls, all I'm doing is looking at what Chris Ault started back in '78, and people said, we don't need to see bowl games. We just won our conference. Well, Chris Ault he was prescient. He had a vision. If you start giving people something to play for outside of their conference championship, people will do it. And then when the bowl sponsors show up and they pay a lot of money, they'll do it. This is a team, these two teams, Penn State, number 10 in the country, Memphis State, number 17. The Cotton Bowl, that will be a play-in bowl. It may take 5 or 6 years, but it will be a play-in bowl if things go the way Chris Ault had them started many moons ago. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, as you talk about the playoff system as it exists, Penn State would have made it, as well as Memphis.
Yeah.
Memphis won the American Conference Championship.
That's right.
One of the highest scoring teams in the country. You're going to match up Memphis and say they have a hot day and go out and knock off Ohio State? Then how does that bowl system look? You take the number 2 team in the country, they fall to the number 17 team. Would people say, okay, Memphis is warranted in moving on in the playoff, and they should have been ranked higher during the regular season than number 17?
Well, I think the same thing if you look across the aisle at basketball. When we've seen a number of, you say a 64 or a 16 seed knocking off number 1, it rarely happens, but it happens. It's just the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat. By the time we get to the round of 32, when a number 8 knocks over number 1.
Think about this. You talk about the thrill of victory.
Yeah.
Is that a win for the networks? Because Ohio State brings 105,000 people to the Horseshoe.
Well,
Memphis brings about 40,000 to the FedEx Field down there in Memphis.
Yeah.
Who's going to travel better for college football viewing? For the stadium, for the concessionaires, for the hotels? Who's going to bring more dollars? Would it be Ohio State or Memphis?
Yeah, I think to them, the sponsor is more important than how many people get on an airplane, because sponsor pays big money. And I think just looking at what Chris Ault started, we haven't seen a shrinkage of the bowl system. We've seen an expansion of it, and I think it's going to keep happening. Notre Dame, they're number 15 in the country. They're playing Iowa State, and that's in the Camping World Bowl down in Orlando, Florida. Irrespective of how many people show up in the stadium, that's a destination that the sponsors love. That's why Notre Dame's going. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Notre Dame will bring forces, Charlton. They always travel well. But when you look at Notre Dame, you remember just a couple years ago, people saying, well, did Notre Dame actually deserve to be in the college football playoff?
Yeah.
When they were trounced in that game by Clemson.
Yeah.
And people said, well, they did not have a conference playoff game. But yet they're in the playoffs, and teams that had conference playoff games were jumped over because Notre Dame was undefeated with 12-0, and the teams that had conference championship games at 12-1, they were punished for having the one loss.
Yeah, that's true. But I think Notre Dame plays as tough a schedule as anybody. But money wins out. I mean, you could argue about Notre Dame, but they will always win out. I want to focus on the 2 big games that we touched on earlier on Saturday. It's a 4 o'clock kickoff East Coast time on ESPN. Oklahoma versus LSU. Oklahoma's number 4. LSU's number 1. It's the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. How many names do they have? It's the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. Remember I told you money rules out? It used to be called the Peach Bowl. Now it's the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. College football semifinal. The tradition, you can't beat Oklahoma when it comes to tradition. I know LSU is big, but Oklahoma has always been the marquee program out of the former Southwest Conference, and then the Big 8 Conference, and now the Big 12. It's still been Oklahoma and Texas, but Oklahoma even more successful than Texas. LSU has not been the marquee program out of the SEC. It's always been Alabama, or some would say even Florida or Georgia, but they've all competed for championships. Big C, your thoughts on this game?
Well, when I look at this game, Charlton, it's going to be the Heisman winner versus the Heisman runner-up. But the Heisman runner-up, this guy is going to come into this game unflappable. You got to realize 3 of the last 4 years, he's played in that stadium, Charlton, in a championship-caliber game.
Yeah.
So Jalen Hurts is at home in Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Georgia as any player that we're going to see in college football. When you think about Division I quarterbacks, he led them all in total touchdowns at Oklahoma. After transferring from Alabama, stepped in, Charlton. He was, embraced by his teammates. He took control of that team, Charlton, out there in Norman, and catapulted them. Lincoln Riley, think about it. This is his 3rd consecutive trip to the college football playoffs. He hasn't made it out of the first round in either one of those trips, Charlton. But is this his time? And having Jalen Hurts, who has never lost a game in the Georgia Dome.
No.
Well, not Mercedes-Benz Stadium, not the Georgia Dome anymore. You got to give him an advantage. Joe Burrow has had an outstanding season at LSU. But going into this game, Oklahoma is a 14.5-point underdog. This is one of those games where if you're Lincoln Riley and you're the head coach, you got to go back to last year and remember what you did to Alabama in the second half.
Yeah.
Do you throw caution into the wind? Do you try all type of trickeration and everything? Do you play that wide-open game and not play cautious like you did against Alabama? Because if you remember, they outscored Alabama. They hung 30 points on Alabama in the second half last year in the game down in the Orange Bowl.
Yep.
They have to play that type of game against LSU if they're going to come out victorious.
Yeah, and even though LSU has the favorite, Oklahoma and LSU both played Texas. Oklahoma won by more. I mean, they won by 7. And then Texas lost to LSU, I think, by 5 points. But Oklahoma gave up about 2 touchdowns. They left on the scoreboard by turnovers. I think that point spread is fool's goal. Oklahoma would not be surprised at all to see them win that game, even though I give LSU a slight edge, basically a very slight edge, but I would not be surprised. And another big game at 8 o'clock kickoff East Coast time on ESPN. Number 3, Clemson versus number 2, Ohio State. Big C. Remember, it used to be called the Fiesta Bowl? Well, now it's called the PlayStation Fiesta Bowl. A lot of kids play PlayStation because the check doesn't bounce. Ohio State is good as they come, but so is Clemson. Clemson hasn't lost a game in 2 years. Ohio State, if anyone can beat them, they've been battle-tested against their last 2 competitions, with whether it's Wisconsin or even Penn State. They've been battle-tested, and really Clemson hasn't been battle-tested. Who do you like in this game? Your thoughts?
Well, I love that phrase that Clemson hasn't been battle-tested. You beat everybody you played for the last 2 years, but you haven't been battle-tested. I mean, it's about a love-hate relationship with the media and Clemson. I respect Clemson ultimately. You go out and you haven't lost a game in 2 years.
Yeah.
You've been battle-tested. It's just everybody else. They said the schedule. College football, just like you talk about expansion of college football. Wouldn't it be about scheduling? Because when you look at some teams, I know everybody cried about Alabama.
Yeah.
Alabama had the 64th strength of schedule in college football. So could you say that Alabama was tested? No. They only had the 64th strength of schedule. So they weren't even in the top 10, top 20 schedule-wise. So they weren't playing the big boys. As I look at Clemson going into this game against Ohio State, I got to like Clemson because when you look at Ohio State's last 2 games, they struggled.
Yeah.
They struggled defensively as teams that could pass. Wisconsin came out, passed the ball on Ohio State. Then they got away from that. They had a lead against Ohio State. Ohio State struggled. Penn State did the same thing. They threw the ball on Ohio State. Ohio State will be facing one of the hottest throwing quarterbacks in the country. I know Joe Burrow won the Heisman Trophy, but right now Trevor Lawrence is playing better football than Joe Burrow or Jalen Hurts at quarterback, and he's playing much better than Justin Fields, who is going to be on the gimp coming to this game.
Yeah.
J.K. Dobbins, tremendous running back for Ohio State. Travis Etienne has another geared running back for Clemson. I like what Clemson brings to this game. That defensive line is just as good as the defensive line they had last year that sent 3 number 1 draft picks to the NFL. You think they haven't seen players like Trace Young? Clemson's had them every year. They had 2 defensive ends, Ceylon Farrell last year, and they got another defensive end that's just as good at Clemson as Chase Young at Ohio State.
Yeah.
I like Clemson in this game because they've been there before. This is old hat for them. And think about it. Clemson goes on and wins, Charlton, and if they win the national championship, you think about 3 out of the last 4 years, they would have been the national championships in this country. That's only been done once in the last 50 years.
Yeah, it's going to be a dynamic game. At least it shapes up to be that way. Tonight's NBA schedule, we have the Wizards playing at the Pistons. The Knicks are at the Nets. The Grizzlies will play at the Thunder, and everybody loves Thunder. We have the Spurs playing at the Mavericks. Timberwolves at the Kings, and the Trailblazers playing at the Jazz. Last night, the battle for LA, it went by way of the LA Clippers with the win over the LA Lakers. Can't wait to see those two teams battle out more. I know you're not really into basketball right now, but Big C, that was great theater. I hear someone paid $40,000. They got ripped off, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, you look at basketball, yes, and basketball has started out and Christmas has come. But you can't tell me right now that the NBA is exciting as it had been for the last 3 years. With the Golden State Warriors made NBA must-see television. They're not the same team this year that they had been over the last previous 5 seasons, Charlton. But everyone would sit on the edge of their seats, and you got to admit yourself to a degree. That game was kind of lackluster last night between those two teams in Los Angeles. When the Golden State Warriors were at their peak over the last couple of years, everyone would sit there and wait on that third quarter run where all of a sudden it'd be a barrage of 15 to 17 points in a matter of 5 minutes that the Golden State Warriors had hung on you. All of a sudden you got players firing up 30, 35-foot three-point shots, sinking them.
Yep.
The Golden State Warriors made the NBA must-see television. The top team in the NBA right now are the Milwaukee Bucks. What's the market size in Milwaukee versus L.A.?
Yeah, it's a small market, and maybe Giannis, that's why I guess Joel Embiid popped Giannis in the eye or the lip or something. He said, this is like 80s basketball back in the day with the Bad Boys, Big C. I want to say you can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Spreaker.com. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast Television. Also, you can follow Big C Sports now on Roku TV. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple TV. You can follow Big C Sports on a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. Really appreciate the growth we're having with Big C Sports. I want to close out with this thought, and we'll cover more NFL football tomorrow, Big C. I know we talked about high school football playoffs. We talked about the college bowl games, and it's too many bowl games, too much. Well, everybody keeps playing because they keep getting paid. Marshawn Lynch, I guess he gets out of his retirement because the Seattle Seahawks want beast mode back. They have a lot of players banged up in Seattle and San Francisco. Could you imagine if we have 2 more weeks to go before the playoffs? The NFL wants to go 18 regular season games. That's way too much. Players can't even get through 16 healthy, Big C. That's why Marshawn Lynch is back. I hope they'll rethink that and think about player health. But I like the fact that beast mode will be in Seattle. I don't know if he's going to help them much. Maybe he'll run the ball 10 times for 40 yards. I think he'll be better just keeping some pressure off of Russell Wilson in the backfield. But the crowd is already crazy. It'll be nice to have him back. Your thoughts?
Well, I think he'll be a motivational lift for the Seattle Seahawks. And this is not the first time that the Seattle Seahawks have brought a player in that has not played all year long. A few years ago, Charlton, they brought in a kick returner, Devin Hester, to help them out during the playoff run on the special teams. And he helped lift them to a victory in the playoffs. I think Marshawn Lynch, with his familiarity with the offense, I don't think it's changed since he was there. He hasn't played since 2018 with the Raiders. But just coming in, trying to get a couple games out of a player, I think he has the physical ability to do that.
Yeah, and the money's going to be nice, too. He'll make about, I think $40,000, $50,000 for one game. That's not bad if they run through the playoffs.
No, with the NFL minimum with Marshawn Lynch, he'll get a six-figure check.
Yeah, he'll get some money. This always, and that's not even the paper bag they're going to give him, Big C. I hear it wasn't Skittles in those paper bags. Big C. Back in the day, there was a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, with all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young man, rumble, Big C. What are you looking forward to in this boys' universe?
Well, Charlton, I'm getting all excited and giddish about Saturday when we have the college football playoffs officially begins with the first 2 games with Oklahoma and LSU and Clemson and Ohio State. we're going to honestly see people that are glued to the tube and stadiums that are full for some college football playoff games.
Well, you can be glued to the tube, too, every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide when you follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. As we always tell you, there's never, ever an excuse for domestic violence. If you know any man or woman going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and call 911, because no man or woman should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.